What I wanted to share with everybody today is, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, a story that will tie into what I want to share with all of you. I had the experience on Sunday of being in Vancouver, Canada, at a bobsled track that was built for the 2010 Winter Olympics. And that's where the bobsled competition was held. And probably some of you have seen the competitions over time period, and you know that these sleds race around the track at breakneck speeds. My experience was such that I got to be with two former Olympians, one driving, one behind me, going 90 miles an hour down this track. And we also had been coached about how to sit in the sled properly, what to do, what not to do. I had been given lots of training and instruction on how to have a successful run through there. The G forces alone going 90 miles an hour through these turns on the track were anywhere between 3.5 and 4 Gs on the body. I have never experienced anything like that in my life. But the thing I want to share with you, why I'm sharing this story with you, is none of that would have been possible if I hadn't had the worst day of my entire career. That was 3 years ago. Everything I learned from that day, awful day in the operating room, 17 hours, also day one in my new alcohol-free life, everything I went through on that day set me up for success and set me on a trajectory so that I could end up in Vancouver, Canada, experiencing something that I've never experienced before. So I want to share with all of you today that when you are experiencing something in your life that at the time feels like an epic setback, it's actually an epic set up. And the key to understanding how to move through it is wrapping your mind around the decision of, how do I want to come out of this? Do I want to come out of it the same, better, or worse? And when you make that decision in your mindset, watch your life change. Watch your life change. This is what I do with my clients on a daily basis. I happen to use a formula that I developed for myself when I was trying to move myself from being a drinker to a non-drinker. I call myself a gray zone drinker at the time because I was in a place where I was definitely depending on alcohol as a self-care kind of tool, but I was able to manage it very effectively so it didn't have any kind of negative impact on relationships in my life. But the work that I was doing, I wasn't to the place that I was so bad that I needed a 12-step program or rehab. But I knew that I didn't want to live that way anymore. And that day, that awful day in the operating room that I shared with all of you, was day one in my new alcohol-free life. It was the catalyst to get me to start thinking differently about what are the things that need to change in my life. And I had to figure out a way to retrain my brain. I had to figure out a way to understand, how can I use my mind to start developing patterns in life that serve me, because the patterns that I had at the time were no longer serving me. I was miserable. That's why I had a gray zone drinking problem. So, as I learned those things, I came up with a program that I now call Revive that I offer to my clients. I used it for myself to completely transform my life. I went from being stuck in the operating room, being miserable, being I didn't know who I was outside of work anymore. I was 55 years old. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And the method that I developed for myself to move myself from being a drinker to a non drinker, to become an entrepreneur, to become someone who is passionate about helping women completely and radically change their lives, the system I developed is called Revive. And in that system, I use a combination of neuroscience, so the way the brain works. I use a combination of mindset and faith, if you're open to it. Those three things together never ever fail to help you completely change your life into a direction and a trajectory that you could only dream of. So thanks for listening to me and sharing my story with you about being on the bobsled track, because again, it never would have been possible if I hadn't had that horrible, awful day in the operating room 3 years ago. So thank you, past me, for turning future me into the person you see in front of you now.